All right, guys, welcome to our June book club. So this is one that was this one came into a slight second place before we did Never Split the Difference. So now we're circling back with Atomic Habits. Anyone just before we get started, everyone's up to speed on the book? Everyone's got a copy? Okay. All good.
Sit further back.
Right
Makes a great paper.
on.
It was in where, and then sir.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go, so the way we do this is we kind of walk through a couple chapters at a time. Try to stay in order, but you guys, the proverbial herding cats. So if you guys want to go a different direction, I'm all good with that, but I may kind of reel it back in. Okay, yeah. So this section, we're doing the intro through chapter 4. So let's start hopping into this. So anything on the intro you guys want to discuss? He was telling the story about what kind of got him into this. Getting hit in the face with a baseball bat.
Which reminded me of the other book, what was that, Morning Habit, or the Morning
Miracle Morning.
Miracle Morning.
As it-
So was recovering from a major
He was recovering from a major.
physical.
Okay. Anyone read Miracle Morning?
I did. I loved that book.
Right on. Okay. Anything else you got from the, hey, what's up, Richard? From the intro?
I think page 6 of the quality statement says there at the very end. It said, looking back in those years, I believe I accomplished something just as rare, and it was a statement that I fulfilled my potential.
So bottom of page 6.
Oh, here I see.
Yep. However, looking back on those years, I believe I accomplished something just as rare, fulfilled my potential. What does that mean to you?
Is that not, well, not sure my potential is fulfilled. That should be I won't say goal, but that's an outcome-based habit. An identity-based habit would be maybe fulfilling your potential, whatever it is. As a father, as a husband, as a realtor, as a fill it in, whatever you want. So fulfilling your potential, from my perspective, whatever the Lord wants me to be, I would be doing it. And if you want to add to the action, that I feel like doing it correctly.
Okay.
At the title should be.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's just going into that point. I think we all have that fear of looking back and like, did we do enough? And so much, and I think that's what happens. And I think a lot of this book, as you start reading through it, gets into this. So much of what we do in our day-to-day lives, like, is unremarkable, right? And a lot of that gets into these, conscious versus subconscious systems. What we're doing in our unconscious, probably we should be paying more attention to, which hopefully will help.
The Carl Jung quote, chapter 4, about making the unconscious and conscious of the.
Yeah.
It's key.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember the quote that.
Yeah. All right, other things you guys got out of the introduction?
About that, the changes are small. It's not like he's asking you to make these big life-changing decisions or changes to your life, that they're small, and it's all about the compounding.
Yep.
Day after day. Not this immediate, like, oh my gosh, I started going and exercising every morning and it's been a week and now I'm lifting, it's the compounding part of it. And it becomes, as long as you're not having this expectation of it being this huge change, I think it makes it more attainable.
Yeah. And that's the first time I read this, I didn't pick up on the atomic part of it. I kind of assumed atomic was like
The bomb.
massive, right? When it's really like they break it down that it's the atoms that make up the molecules that make up, objects. So
I mean, I was
Yeah.
talking to, well, we were talking out there getting coffee with Krista, and she was asking if it's a good book, and I was like, you know, it talks about like the simple things that we think about that are habits that we don't even think about as habits anymore, brushing your teeth or, you know, waking up and checking your phone, you know, all those things that have become habits that we don't even think about. And how, you know, it's just incorporating these other things that you stop thinking about even doing at a certain point.
Have you seen that visualization of dominoes with the launcher? Where we have the little domino, it's like this tall. And it's, I guess if they're put in sequence, in certain order, you hit the first domino, by the time it hits the last domino, it's a huge wall.
Yeah.
Now it's just like a chain reaction.
There's a statement, on page 9, I thought that you would love, but I think it's really key to what he's talking about. He's saying he's drawing from biology, neuroscience, philosophy. He makes this statement here at the end of that paragraph, into the book. My contribution, in other words, he's writing the book. My contribution, I hope, is to find the ideas that matter most and connect them in a way that is highly actionable. And so I think that, for example, when either doing a book study or growing a skill set, be part of, say, one of the, like a Buffini club or something like that, or part of that is all designed really, whether consciously or subconsciously, that we can be better with our action steps. And so highly actionable was sort of a phrase you use a lot.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a good summary of the book. Whatever he's gonna do, if that's his goal, then there's some merit there with that, so.
I like that. All right, yeah, and while we're on 9, so 9, he kind of lets us into the 4 steps. You guys know what they are?
Q is the first one.
Yes, good.
Great.
Craving,
Yeah.
Responsive.
response, and reward.
Cue, craving, response, reward, and I think this is probably it's gonna be like a mantra. I think you guys will probably, hopefully, at the end of the book, just rattle off your tongue, and I think just becoming, and as we get through this, right, like I'm the one who's jumping ahead now. That's that subconscious versus conscious, and then bringing a lot of these things to the forefront to recognize what's happening, good or bad. I'm sorry, I'm Joe, by the way.
Hi, I'm Julie,
Julie,
Nice
what's your last name?
Julie Carter.
Julie Carter.
Yes.
Everybody, this is Julie.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, most of us are in the real estate office here. So, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
What company are you at?
I'm with Sadler Falls.
Oh, very cool.
The restaurant.
Oh.
Yes, love it,
Nice to
Jack.
meet you. Love that place. Yay,
And welcome here to our book club.
thank you.
All right, anything else in the intro? And again, we just came off the heels of Never Split the Difference, which was pretty much all about emotion, right? And in a sense, how to just like harness it, but how to use it in your favor. And again, he talks about the top of page 10, bottom of page 9. So he said the Skinner lacked a good explanation of how our thoughts, feelings and beliefs impact our behavior. Internal states, our moods and emotions matter too, right? I think that's, from a decision-making point of view, that is really critical. Anything else in intro? What were the 4 things again?
Q, craving, response, and reward.
Right on. Okay. Chapter 1, the surprising power of atomic habits.
So I thought the story of the cycling team was pretty amazing. And how they transformed their team with really basically small changes.
Yeah.
And then I have the, you know, improving by 1% isn't notable or even noticeable. but over time, it's astounding. And if you can get 1% better each day for a year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done.
You guys believe that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he says it. What I liked, about the team thing, was how they broke down every aspect of racing,
Mhm.
to the clothing they wore,
Right.
to the condition of the surface of the tires, to breaking everything down, so that all those little 1% were spread out over a whole
Yeah.
block of activity. And I thought the breaking down to such minute, areas was interesting. It wasn't just, oh, I'm going to practice an extra 5 minutes every day,
Right.
or do an extra put, whatever it was physically. Just really analyzing the entire situation.
I think the other side of that is that a lot of the things that we fall into naturally that have become these habits are highly inefficient. We just do them.
Yeah.
Right, so
Right. Right.
with the cycling, they feel like they're going out there working hard,
Yeah,
they're practicing, they're just wearing the same gear, doing the same thing.
Right.
And they don't realize how inefficient they are until they actually do take a look at it.
Right. Right.
So why don't we do this on a regular basis then?
My wife tries to get me to do it all the time.
She's a scientist too, though.
It's because we feel like it's gonna take more time than we had to.
The reward isn't big enough,
Quick
maybe?
enough, yeah.
Well,
It's not quick enough, yeah.
It doesn't seem like that would make a difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, cause I'm sure all of these things, as, the team was probably like, it's not any of those things, because those are inconsequential, we're just
Right.
not fast enough. But when you break down all of those other little things, that they all seemed inconsequential individually, but then grouped together, they turned that team around.
But I bet you're convinced that if you're 1% worse each day, right? I think we understand the negative. But to believe the positive, the compound of positive.
Yeah, and he had that chart, so skipping had 16, I think and I'm not great at math, sorry, even though I shouldn't say that, right? Like, I'm currently not good at math. Right? So the decline, so the 1% worse, you wind up plateauing, right? Like you wind up getting to a point where on this chart, right, like your 1% less is, you almost don't see the worseness. But your 1% better doesn't start showing up until later on, and then it goes up. So I think there's a little bit of you'd expect almost like an identical type of response from the 1% better or 1% worse. And I think you almost get lulled into, well, I'm not getting, it's not like it's getting that much worse. How would it get that much better? Maybe,
Right. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
I mean, not to get too personal with myself, but everybody's seen my transformation over the past 2 years, and that was very slow. 2 years of a little bit at a time. And
What did you transform into? Tell us.
butterfly.
Yeah.
Was it a weight loss?
Yeah, I've lost 100 pounds.
Congratulations. She's pretty impressive.
But it took, and it's not until like recently that people are like, oh my gosh, look at you. Because it's been this slow.
Yeah.
Slow thing.
Hey, Joe,
Yeah.
so they use a professional sports team here. And so just from things I've read and paid attention, like professional sports have changed and evolved incredibly over, say the last 20, 30 years. To when you have these groups of people that excellence is their goal, period, whether it be a sprinter or a long distance runner or a professional soccer player, and they come into these teams, and the difference between the very best and second and third place is not that different. And so these groups of, and there's going to be an application for us in a second, I'll get that, but so these groups of people are, well, they want to win the league. No one remembers who comes in second, or no one remembers who lost the Super Bowl or second on the World Series. They want to win these things. And so these professional athletes, say the very finest of the finest of athletes and the very finest of the trainers, understand these principles. So a key component would be there's excellence being as part of their makeup. So when we translate that, thus as realtors, back to a question that you had, or just regular folks who maybe excellence isn't part of what our makeup, but we do want to get better, is that we can get bogged down into small increments of change. So when Tracy tells her story, I mean, we can be greatly encouraged about that because it's a very cool story, and it took a while, and here we are. And so we can get the victory, but I think that there's an element here that we need to understand, that excellence and being the very best of what we want is probably not what defines each of us. Maybe some of us, maybe some of the other people. It's not probably something that defines all of us. So we have to be careful we don't get trapped there. This is probably a system that would work really well when being the very best of the best is what you want. And so fulfilling your potential could be an example of that, but you have to be careful you don't confuse that with being the top realtor in Maryland.
Sure,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, and I think looking at these examples, I think what happens is, I think just like with these sports teams, they all intend to win, right? Why do some come in 10th place, some come in first? And we all intend, like most of us intend to be healthier, right? Whatever that means. But why don't we, right? Like, why do we, because we wind up kind of struggling with it. And I think it's what this is trying to do is tack into that process, right? And it's literally processes,
And I
right?
think part of it is our society in general, and, social media and the whole, like, you're seeing I lost 50 pounds in 3 weeks, and, you're seeing all these rapid, I went from this to this just by following this. And we get wrapped up in the instantaneous need to have it happen right away. I see that with my kids, with everything when we were little, I was just talking to someone, you waited for the Sears catalog and you circled all the things that you wanted for Christmas. Of course I am. That was the most exciting thing. I'm 53. I love that Sears catalog, and we'd lay on the floor and we'd circle all the things. I mean, and if you got them, that was awesome. And if you didn't, then the next year you're circling some more stuff. But now, like, everybody, Amazon's there in a day or sometimes less.
30
And
seconds.
we all just want things right away. And there's not, I feel like as a society, most people have gotten a little bit lazy about what it takes to make it. They want it right away because everybody else looks like they're getting it right away. Why shouldn't I?
And I'll go back to never split the difference, right? Why do we sometimes lose negotiations? Because we just want to get to the end of it. Let's just get to the conclusion immediately, right? If I can ask just one quick question and then I can just say, they were unreasonable and I tried. And that was kind of the challenge in that book, was to like follow a process, ask, go through these different steps. Yeah, and I think that is, like, again, going back to sports, like baseball isn't won in home runs, it's won in singles, walks, stolen base. It's these little, like, moving the ball forward, moving the base path forward. That's what's really won. But like, you don't see on Sports Center, like, the walk, right? Like, you see the grand slam home run.
The next.
You see the 4-run home run, right? To pull the game within 13 runs.
You're still
Alright.
following the Orioles, apparently.
Yeah. All right. Other stuff in chapter 1.
But he does refer to all that as the aggregation marginal gains. And
Yeah.
that's a big topic to try and get your head around. What's that look like? He does have a phrase to explain really what he's talking about.
Which page?
First page, the first page of chapter 1, bottom of the page. last paragraph, middle of the last paragraph.
The aggregation of marginal gains. Yep.
You're late for class.
Oh, she wasn't even gonna come, so.
I know. And
You have
then
to do a little dance.
curiosity.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
Nice me to dance.
I mean, I like the table where it talks about positive and negative compounding.
Yep.
And, I really believe like just the relationships and you go to the grocery store and you're nice to the checkout person and then they're gonna be nice to the next person that comes in line who's maybe having a really bad day. And, I really feel strongly about that, same thing where we all just want to get so furious in traffic and it's really just let the person in. That may make them a little less angry at the next person that tries to get in and we all get to where we're going without dying.
Yeah.
And I do believe that, really that smile, that just whatever, that little increment of something can make such a difference.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Going back to sports, did you guys see like they were talking about
So,
Otani, the Japanese baseball player? So they just came out with a thing like he says hi to the umps after every at bat, before every at bat, and he's the only player in the MLB to do that. Now other players are starting to do this. Like it's just something that it spreads the other way too, right? Like here's the top player, and like what is he doing to succeed? Saying hi to the umps. Now it's like, oh,
if he's sliding in and it's a questionable call, is that ump gonna be like,
100%.
safe?
He's got equity, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
because he's the one that like, okay, I'm just this guy everybody, whatever, ignores in my
Or
ear.
be bringing like flowers to the home plate next time.
Like, up referees and it
Yeah.
plays, he's like, hey man, how's the daughter? Hey man,
Yeah.
right? Everything about the best thing.
And I think that what progress is like on 20, talking
Yeah.
about raising the temperature,
Yes.
just shows you like little, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's so hot.
And then,
big.
yeah, y'all know what water boils at? 212, right? Yeah, 212, like 211, it's just scalding hot. It doesn't boil, right? Like what, it's that one, and that's the one thing, like, same thing with the ice melting
Yeah.
on the opposite scale. Yeah, good job. Tell Chris you did good.
Put a star on your
Yeah.
notebook there.
Oh yeah, this line on 21, it says, your work is not wasted, it's just being stored. Right? And I think some of that is a lot of our journey as entrepreneurs is a little bit of a test of faith, because you will try to, I'm sure that cycling team, like we were talking about, like putting on a different Lycra, right? Like, how's that really going to make a difference? I like the one I have. And you got to have some faith that your efforts aren't being wasted, even though you haven't seen those outcomes. Because again, 18, they talk about outcomes being a lagging measure, right? Like it's just, and to our point where we were talking about earlier, is we expect action, outcome, right side.
And on 21, they had a couple examples of the tectonic plates rubbing together for millions of years, and then all of a sudden, and a stone cutter hammering, and the stone's not breaking for the first 100 blows, but the 101st.
Top of 22 is that plateau of latent potential, right? What we think is going to happen versus what actually happens.
The valley of disappointment.
Yes.
That's where we get stuck, though. That's where we give up.
Yep. Other thoughts on chapter 1?
Well, I feel like, Joe, you'll love the 23 where it says forget about goals and focus on systems.
I was just looking at that.
There's another sports metaphor. I hate to spring it up. The lady said that back there, but
Stroking that.
Yeah.
in the context of whether basketball or baseball, when the coach is having a conniption fit over a call, and that we see that it never changes that, but Bobby Bowden said, it's never about that call, it's about the next call. And so when explaining that out further, he says it's your way to show the umpires that you're paying attention to the game. And so that maybe the other coach might be paying attention, but I'm paying attention, and we get those calls
Yeah.
right. And the reason I mentioned that application is for us in our business is that, you know, we've been bullied, we've been maybe not treated rightly, but not that we get up and yell and carry on, but we let them know that's not okay. And we know we may not be able to win that moment, but it's like, you know, when the next negotiation after
Yep.
the home inspection, we're paying attention and just, as an example,
Yeah,
maybe not
uh-huh.
a good example, but, we're paying attention.
And I think his examples of talking about goals, and while goals are great, that can't be the end, because then you just stop progress once you reach the goal.
Yeah, 24 gets into, I'm sorry, page 24, the problem with having a goal mentality versus kind of a process mentality. Which, you know, I guess both can be true, right? Like, I think, you know, there's the example of are you know, filling sandbags, or are you saving a city, right? Like, there's that old fable about the people filling sandbags, and the people who filled more understood what they were doing by filling those sandbags, as opposed to the other person it was a task. It was meaningless. You know, but they also give the example, you know, like staring at the scoreboard doesn't necessarily, watching the goal, what's going to happen doesn't make it happen. Problem one with goals is winners and losers have the same goals. Problem two, achieving a goal is only a momentary change, right? We get this all the time because, you know, when it was for us in a real estate transaction, once that transaction's over, it's done. It's on to, you know, you got to be on to the next.
Well, that's why systems. And again, the goal, you gotta remember the journey. So the system of the process,
Mhm.
the experience, or rather, the journey.
Yep.
I think that's more memorable. And feel that accomplishment. And repeat it.
Yep.
Journey,
What's that?
the journey.
The journey. Yep.
Well, the sentence, or two sentences, the purpose of setting goals is to win the game.
Which
Purpose
page?
of 27.
Page 27.
The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game.
Yes.
Good, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Goals win the game. Processes keep you playing the game.
And that was what he wrote, it's not my fault.
Yep. And then bottom of 27 is where I had my epiphany as to, oh, that's what they mean by atomic habits.
Right.
Not like massive explosions. Okay. Anything else? Chapter 1.
Well, to get away from sports. When
Yes.
he said that, on page 23, he said it again, where he said goals are about the results you want to achieve, as opposed to things being achieved. Said again later, goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that to it.
Yeah.
So then we can plug anything we want from there. Don't have to think about profitable.
Yes.
I think in Buffini's, one of his mastery classes, exactly what we talked about is that focusing on your systems. Put your systems in place, let them do their thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to, well, anyway.
Yeah, I talk to folks about this when it comes to hiring, like fall in love with the process, not the people. Right. And that's sometimes when it comes to hiring, like, especially for us in the real estate business, we are very much typically people-driven people. We like to work with people we like to work with, people like to work with us. And we tend to try to hire people like us, and find the spot for them, when really you got to find that. And sometimes you might hire someone who isn't like you, who doesn't, and that's really, sometimes that's what you need them for, is to be in that process that you're maybe not as good at.
Take that first statement. Hire a person.
Oh, hire for the process, not the person, or, yeah. Or fall in love with the process, not the people. All right, chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. Thoughts on that? Page 29. So changing our habits is challenging for 2 reasons. Number 1, we try to change the wrong thing. And number 2, we try to change our habits in the wrong way, right? And I think that's kind of the key to why we haven't been able to change sometimes the outcomes, right? That we're working sometimes on the wrong things, and maybe you are working on the right thing, but we're just going at it the wrong way.
This reminds me of like vision boards and when books or whatever, they say, really picture yourself where you want to be, get all the details in. To me, that's the identity.
Yes.
You can pinpoint the identity, then your goal setting, I don't know, it's like, that's what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Becoming that person I visualized.
Yeah, instead of, well, outcome-based versus identity-based,
Right.
which is what he
Suppose-
talks about.
Yeah. So that's 30, pages 30 and 31.
So it's a real simple example. So if you did this, it was about process efficiency. Anybody here drink coffee or tea in the morning?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
I started drinking coffee when I had, first job.
Yeah.
And they gave an example of somebody that was putting their pot of coffee on, and coffee's over here, filters are here, water's over here, coffee pot's here. That person on average took it'd be like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute longer to brew their coffee than the person that has the coffee pot right next to the water, filters, right in the cabinet right there with the coffee mugs. And it's a very small amount of time. If you drink coffee 7 days a week, 365 days a year, this starts adding up to you're wasting a lot of time, right? So it's an example of how very small changes just the location of where some of the things that you're gonna need, and then how that adds up every time. I'm gonna waste a day out of my life just making coffee, right? So if I can get more efficient with it, but this chapter hits on some of that stuff.
Wait, seeing that, I don't know if anybody has, where you have the cones set up and you have the people racing, and some people start by grabbing the first cone, and then other people start by grabbing the last. How, much faster it is to start at the back than it is to start at the front. I don't know whether that makes anything to do with habits, but
Sure.
just the idea of time.
Yeah. And we're gonna they dig into those habit stacking. That's one of the principles that he gets into, where you do stack these processes on top of each other.
Since I'm auditing, please excuse me if I ask a question, but does he give an example of when you're changing the wrong habit? And what does that mean?
Good question.
I don't think he's talking about changing a bad habit, opposed to just explaining habits work. Whether they're negative or not.
Well, he does talk about how unhealthy habits feel impossible to break, right in the beginning of chapter 1, or chapter 2. And changing our habits is challenging for 2 reasons. We try to change the wrong thing, and we try and change it in the wrong way, so.
Yeah, so and again, going back to that question, I think that's a really good question. What are habits what is an example of that?
Like getting home and putting your PJs on and sitting in front of the TV instead of recocking your bathroom or. I'm just thinking about me.
Yeah.
On my to-do list, but
I think sometimes we're also our self-awareness is wrong too. And I think we sometimes I think we ran into this and Never Split the Difference a lot, where we were kind of, again, I kind of put myself on trial personally, where I was like, all right, like, we'll stop saying that you're doing this, this, and this, when you're really not, or you're giving it a half effort, and then it's not working right away, and then you're blaming something else, an external. You know, because I think it is, what are the wrong habits you try to create to fix an outcome? Just not coming up with a good example specifically.
And he talks about the nail chewing story.
Yeah.
The Brian Clark and how his wife scheduled a manicure for him. And then because his nails look so nice, he stopped chewing on them and then just got regular manicures. So it was, you know, he figured out a way to change a bad habit in a way that, you know, made sense to him, or maybe he didn't even think about that when you know, his wife set up the manicure, but then it's like, oh wow, that looks really nice. And then suddenly he's not chewing his nails anymore.
So let's take a step back real quick. Back to 30 and 31, the identity. Are you guys on board with identity-based versus outcome-based?
Key right there.
So give me some examples of what identity-based is versus outcome-based.
What, can I speak to that?
Yeah.
So this is the
As long as
moment
it's
in
not
the book
sports.
that I realized, it's not sports.
I'm joking.
This is where the moment in the book where I like, there's like a breakthrough. So for example, it's been a number of years where I saw a podcast, read a book, whatever, I can't remember where the information came from. And the challenge was by the speaker, if you want to be in the context of bettering yourself, whatever that means. If next year you want to be different than you are today, it's going to be a function of two things: the books you read and the people you have relationships with. So I thought, okay, I'm in the business, I'm in lots of relationships and all that. And that's a different conversation. Reading the books made that goal. I'll do that. So I came here, you guys started a book club. I'm like, well, that's part of what I'm trying to do. Let me do that. But what I learned when I studied this book is that making the goal of reading books is outcome based. And what he put on the table and spoke to me was that reading books is good, but it's a good goal to have. But perhaps becoming a reader is a better goal. And so I never thought of myself as a reader. And now I go back to this lesson I learned that this guy was teaching about. You know, person you're going to be a year from today is going to be a function of the books you read and the influences and the relationships you have. And so I took away the goal, read books, but he may very well have been saying is that you need to be a reader, a chaser of information, purposeful and intentional about learning. And so when I read this today about being a reader, I'm thinking, holy mackerel, it's like, I have this goal here. I'm in this club today because I had a goal of reading a book is something I want to do. But have I really interested in reading, or am I just interested in reading a book and finishing the book? And I think there's a big difference with that. And so in terms of habits, identity-based habits versus outcome-based habits, is that an outcome-based habit is reading a book. For me was to just read the book, part of the club, show up, do the work. But identity-based, changing for life, is developing the habit of reading. Now, whatever that means to you, I don't know. It meant a lot to me when I read it. And I thought, that's really good. If I don't read another page in the book, man, I was just glad that I read that. So
Yeah.
But
I
you're a
think that has-
reader, so you have to read.
well, our young people today, I don't mean to go off on a tangent here, but you know, I wasn't raised with the internet. So my kids, I mean, we're like, if you come to the table, you better not bring your food or you're not eating. It's not that bad actually, but we're just trying to discourage the phones at the table when you're there. Like, you're with human beings now. There's nothing that important. None of my children are surgeons waiting for a text or a call to come to the hospital. So, put your phones aside. But so I was raised, and I'm an old gaffer, but it's like, you know, the phones are just a major distraction. If the children today, the children, I'm sorry, are
The
different
youths-
generation.
Yeah.
Are youths, that's right. Yeah. They, the phones and intermediate gratification that comes with that And they're doing a different type of reading. So when I say become a reader, I'm not saying it has to be books only. There's gotta be room for social media and internet in there. I'm just not sure how that actually fits, but there's a whole new generation in place. I'm not preaching to them. You need to read books. I think they should, by the way.
Yeah.
But they're doing their reading in lots of different ways as well, so, trying to be a little more open with that.
Sure. Yeah, so, and I think we'll agree, like, process is one of the things that like has to happen, right? For meaningful change, and it sits in that inner ring, right? Like, you've got to get to it to have something I think to have this successfully happen. It's just which way do you go, this way or this way? And I think so. It's really, are we outcome driven or identity driven? And I think you know the point Mark made was really good. Is that I think once you develop an identity as a reader, as opposed to my goal is to read 12 books a year, right? Like, so when you come home, it's like, okay, like I'm in the 6th month of the year, I've read 4 books, I got to read another 8 between now and the end of the year. I mean, I got another 7 months to read. Yeah, well, I got another 7 months to read. I don't necessarily, I'll read tomorrow, right? How about that? But if I'm a reader, like, and I've got my book out and it's where my comfy chair is and where it's on my bed before I go to bed, right? Like they talk about those examples, then okay, that's what I am, right?
When I think about the examples, it's the goal is not to read a book, but become a reader, not to run a marathon, but to become, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and you could think about that, like if me or someone was like, or, you know, even you with your bike race, like, my goal is to do that. Ride, yes, not race, sorry. But let's just say you don't attain the marathon or the finish line or whatever. Do you give up or do you continue to be a runner or a cyclist or a whatever? But if if the goal is the only thing that you're striving towards, and let's say you can't make it, then do you quit being that thing? And that's, I guess, the habits make you a cycler or a runner, and the goal isn't as important as the habit itself of becoming whatever that is.
Yeah, sure. The distinction of being a reader versus reading a certain amount of books, we can apply it to our profession. And like, instead of saying, you want to sell $20 million of real estate, obviously that could be a byproduct of gross commission income, part of the plan, but I want to be recognized as a realtor of excellence in my top, you know, person in my field and blah, blah, blah. And some of these things are going to be byproducts of it, but to put it on the athletic component, we try to tell the kids to don't think of yourself as just a soccer player or this, think of yourself as an athlete. You happen to play, you know, this, but because you have these athletic traits, you can run, you got to work out in gym class in the future, you got to do X, Y, Z. Because a lot of us, if we view ourselves as just that singular thing, and then you can't do that for some reason, or you don't have an opportunity to, then you kind of give up.
Yeah, and you know, you think about like, I ran a marathon one time and almost killed myself doing it. But it was like do or die, got to get there. And like I think about like these examples, like people who climb Everest, like the people who just against better judgment, they're like, I made it this far, I'm going to Everest, and I don't care, right? And some of them wind up dying because of that dumb decision, because they know to get back to this point, because they're not necessarily an alpinist climber, that it's like, this is my one shot. And that's where some of this is, if you don't have that identity, it is very much a doer, like you wind up at these moments where shit ain't going right. And if you don't have an identity and it's just a goal based, you lose that motivation that sometimes you're going to have a setback and now I've got to crawl back out of that hole and go forward again. And if you don't have that as an identity, I think it's very superficial. Speaking about identities, anyone do like mantras, morning mantras or affirmations?
I did start doing that on a daily and evening basis. I would read one affirmation at night and then read it again and repeat it in the morning.
Say that again, Shira.
So at night, I have a book and it's got a bunch of affirmations in it, and I also make up my own, but I read it at night to myself, like right before I go to bed, because the last thing that you hear in your head is kind of what you wake up thinking. And then I wake up in the morning and I'll say it or read it again to myself.
Okay, awesome. Has it helped? Do you think it helps?
Oh, 100%. And going back to like, I guess some of the habits, right? It was for me, I was not a morning person, like, but I told myself, like, I am a person who wakes up very early in the morning. That had to start becoming a part of my new identity. And just going back to
The more you repeat a behavior, the more you reinforce the identity.
exactly. But so just talking about negative habits. So one thing for me was putting my phone in a different place so that I had to get up out of my bed to go get it. But the habit wasn't getting up out of my bed, it was putting the phone somewhere else the night before.
Anyone else do affirmations?
Girl, I'm like, she's here already. What?
I'm not. I'm looking at
Because we
Sue.
do affirmations.
Yeah.
We want to hear somebody else.
I said, I just read my scriptures in the morning, and that's
Okay.
a lot better.
Yep.
Do you do affirmations, Joe?
What? Yeah, I do. I actually started it after we did ninja selling, and I still do it. My kids think it's crazy because they don't handwrite anything. So this booklets of like handwritten stuff over and over and over again, like a mad person is like does it.
It's helping. Sorry, I gotta turn it around on you.
Yes, Tracy, I find it very helpful.
Can you expand on that?
Again, I think it just sets for me, what it's done is it just gets me into, I do it in the morning, first thing when I wake up, before I open my phone, do 25 affirmations, and then I read, I've got a book someone gave me it's called The Daily Stoic. It's just like a little, almost like prayer. It's just like a little thought of the day. But I start with affirmations, and that kind of lines up a little bit of like who you want to be that day, what you're striving to become. And then that sometimes gets me into a mindset of, okay, like I've got all these things I need to do. What's most important to do this, right? Like, so I think it helps, like just subconsciously.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? All right. Anything else in chapter 2? 35, do you ever say I'm terrible at math? I'm not a morning person.
Totally.
Yeah.
I am too.
It's so true, the double-edged sword that we
Yeah.
can set ourselves up to think that we're a certain way. That it's a change in language, which changes the perception, the identity in our minds.
Yeah. And I guess they've done books and studies on this, like as kids, like, we wanted to be like, the world was ours, right? And then someone crushed us when we were like 5 or 6, told us we just couldn't do
Like my
that.
algebra 2 teacher that told me I was stupid, that one.
Yeah.
Well, for any of us that have ADD, we were always told we were scatterbrained
Yeah,
or we couldn't
stupid
focus.
or, yeah.
So it's easy to have interpreted a lot of these things, and we can turn it around. But it takes time.
I mean, and on page 39, he makes it a easy 2-step process. Decide the type of person you want to be and prove it to yourself with small wins.
Where's that? 39?
39.
Yep. Okay, right at the middle.
It's a lot of mindfulness.
Yeah.
Because like what you were saying, getting up in the morning and reading your affirmations, kind of setting the time for doing that's deliberate as opposed to getting up and brushing your teeth and going to work and dealing with the kids. All of a sudden days of mindfulness to make it more.
And I think it's like if you think about, so I want to lose 50 pounds, I can put this into perspective. Versus I want to be a healthier version of myself. So you could say, oh, well, that brownie's not going to put make me gain weight. But if you're thinking along the lines of being a healthier version of yourself, well, maybe I should have the fruit instead of the brownie. You know, it just changes your mindset from a goal to being a different kind of person. And would a healthy person choose that over that? Yes, but
So top of 37 is the definition, the Latin definition of identity, which is basically repeated beingness, right? Think about that. Your identity is your repeated beingness. The actions you repeat over and over become who you are. And it says, top of 39, you don't need a unanimous vote to win an election. You just need a majority, right? So that gives you a little bit of you know, sometimes that brownie slips into your mouth and you accidentally like hit the table or, right? Sometimes you listen to some commands, but not all the commands, but at least you're listening to most of the commands.
You come over to take a whiz over here, is that what you're doing?
Quite literally, you become your habits. That's the last line on 41. Okay, chapter 3. Yeah, go for it.
on 41 real quick, which it was the one, because I feel like in this day and age, we're infiltrated with hacks, life hacks. And I did like where he said building better habits isn't about littering your day with life hacks. Which I did like, because I do feel like, you know, everybody's selling you on these hacks to make your life different, and, you know, it's really not about that.
I just want to say something about not being a morning person. So I'm not a morning person because I have 2 or 3 years of restaurant before I went into real estate, and so I'm a night owl. I used to go to sleep at 5 in the morning every night, and so that's been my habit. And I've always said, look, I'm not a morning person, but I want to change that. Now that I've read this book, I'm thinking about that 1% change. You know, I wake up 8 o'clock, which is probably very late for some of you guys, right? But that's what I do. I'm thinking about maybe every day or every week, maybe change it like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Set my alarm clock at 7:55 and go to sleep 5 minutes earlier. And then the week after that, maybe 7:50, and eventually through time, I can start waking up, you know, 7:30, 7 o'clock, and bring it up a little bit.
Well, what time do you go to bed at?
I go to bed like at 2, 3 in the morning. I'm sending out emails at 1 in the morning. I mean, that's my normal. I mean, my kids go to bed at 10 o'clock, man. I'm on the computer for 10 to 1.
So going to
Work.
bed 5 minutes.
I'm doing Zooms at 11 o'clock at night. You know, like that's just my normal schedule.
Right.
And so I'm trying to change that a little bit.
Who are you doing a Zoom with at 11 o'clock?
Rich with team members. Yeah, Zoom 11, 12, my team members.
Rich, how do you feel about that?
Well, not like now, he's been more experienced, but I mean, like, my new.
Yeah, notice how his spirits are a lot better right now.
Yeah. No, it's constant, and so I want to change that habit, so I think the book's gonna help me.
Do you need to change that habit, or is
That's what
that
I
a
was
long
thinking.
habit that,
It's
you know?
a bad
that's what I
habit,
was
it's a
thinking.
bad habit for
Why?
your
Why is it
business.
bad?
Why?
Yeah,
Well, like, you had me doing Zooms at 11 o'clock, why is it bad?
That, no, but if your 8 to 2 o'clock works for you,
It does work, because it's my quiet time, because the kids,
So-
wife is in bed, I mean, it works for me, that's what.
I mean, the alternative is switching it around, but who are you switching it around for?
Would this be an example of changing the wrong habit?
I don't know. I mean, I can do the emails in the morning before the kids wake up and go to school, you know, before I can ready, so I can kind of.
But well, I guess you would have to try it out and see, you know, you're used to this, and maybe that's when you're productive. I mean, I think
Well,
it's,
so part of that is on that kind of schedule, we only have so many, I'd say we have based on sleep and whatnot, we have a schedule of when we can be productive, right? And it depends on when we do the most productive activities in that day. You know,
I guess that's what I was getting at, if
But I think-
this
yeah.
productivity is in the late nights versus getting up a couple hours early and making it be that, does it, as long as you're being
It
productive,
doesn't
doesn't
affect
matter,
because I'm working all day long,
right?
and so I'm tired, so my brain is slower. even though I'm used to that habit, but I feel like if I wake up earlier with a fresh mind, I can probably do things a little quicker and think a little quicker
Sure.
and with my, activities.
He's good now.
Yeah, I think it would help.
And I'll just go, if you did want to do something like that, one thing, and they'll talk about this, is giving yourself like a routine in the morning so that you have stuff immediately to do that kind of gets your day started on. And that's where I got into some morning route. And again, like Miracle Morning talks about some morning routines that help almost give you a reason to get up and then get you doing some productive things that you normally don't get done because, and that's what happens sometimes is the stuff we tackle at the end of the day is usually stuff like, oh, I forgot to do. It's rarely do you tackle some stuff at the end of the day that's like, now is the time to like build a better me kind of stuff. Like I find that usually falls by the wayside.
Can I just chime in? I just want to say like that kind of was what happened to me and I was a bartender for years. I had really no reason to get up early, and it took me like a while to change everything. But once I started to get into the habit of getting up, and Miracle Morning was like, that was a game changer for me. But it took me a really long time to kind of like, now it's a habit, everything's a habit. And now that I get up super early, it's changed who I am and who I feel I am as a person. And obviously I switched careers. So it did help me completely change my identity to, again, not just that I sell houses now, but that I am a realtor.
Awesome.
I'm just curious, what time do you wake up? What time do you guys wake up?
I now get up at 5:30. I used to get up at about 8:15.
6:40.
Yeah,
I be if I sleep till 5:30. Sometimes it's 4:30, but it's not
So I've
It's not a
actually
choice.
become a later sleeper because I don't sleep well anymore, and some of my best sleep is after my husband is gone to work. And so I'm getting up later, but I feel like I need that, like, because I'm, us women of a certain age maybe don't sleep as well as we used to, and I'm finding that some of my best sleep, and if I don't get that like last hour after I've already woken up a couple times, then so I think but I'm still productive, but I work till I go to bed at night often. I'm sitting and doing the things, the admin type stuff that I didn't have time for during the day. And I keep thinking, oh, I want to get up earlier and get to the gym in the morning instead of later in the day and all these things, but I also love that extra like hour of sleep I'm getting that I feel like is changing my day for the positive as well.
I guess mine was a little different because now that I wake up earlier, I have like peaceful time in the morning. Because I used to wake up and right away I was thrown into the chaos of getting the kids ready for school. And I woke up into chaos. And it just sort of right off the bat set me in that mood. But now that I get up super early, I have like this awesome, hour and a half, 2 hours to sit, do my affirmations. I read. I've got my little spot on the couch. I drink my coffee. And it's kind of been good for me to set my tone differently each morning, again, as opposed to waking up right into chaos.
Yeah, I get that because when my kids were at home, I always got up well before them to have some time to, but now that.
That's exactly what I do. I wake up and get the kids ready for school and I wake in the chaos. So that's exactly right.
Yeah.
All right, chapter 3, how to build better habits in 4 simple steps. So this gets into the, why your brain builds habits, right? And a lot of that is your conscious can only deal with one problem at a time. So it offloads stuff to your subconscious to like deal with this shit while I'm dealing with this. And that's where, when you have habits, it will help you deal with the other stuff while you are sometimes dealing with a mind consuming issue.
I like on page 45, as habits are created, the level of activity in the brain decreases. Which, yeah, you're not laying there in bed thinking like, oh, that, I didn't get to that today, or I didn't, if a lot of your life is, like you said, on autopilot, then everything gets sort of
Yep.
done.
So the 4 steps are the cue, craving, response, reward. The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. So the cue is what it's about noticing the reward. The craving is about wanting the reward. The response is about obtaining. So if a behavior is insufficient in any of the 4 stages, it will not become a habit, right? If the cue never happens, we never initiate 2, 3. If it's not, right, if we don't want it bad enough, then we wind up, cue happens, and then we're like, meh, right? And then the response, if we don't get the response we want, then it's not worth it. Thoughts on this? Just a little, hurt your brain a little?
Where he talks about cravings and, you're not craving the habit itself, but the change in state it delivers. You don't crave smoking a cigarette, but the feeling of relief it provides. You're not motivated by brushing your teeth, but the feeling of a clean mouth. Every craving is linked to a desire to change your internal state, which I think it was an interesting way. You don't want to turn on the television, you want to be entertained. So it's figuring out what your body is looking for in those things to.
But I think as and again, it gets into this recognition, right? Like the first step of any kind of healing is kind of recognizing what's there and what's happening. And as they walk through like page 52, some of these cue, craving, response, reward type of situations, you realize, oh, this is happening all day long,
every day. Yeah.
right? In my with my phone, with eating, with any kind of stimulus.
Actually, it puts a positive spin on craving, wanting, attaining. There's a proverb like the one with an empty stomach works harder. I mean, that's really what it's saying. If you want it bad enough, whatever it may be, you're gonna. So it's like, good. I'm glad I'm feeling uncomfortable. This is good. It's stretching me. It's making me attain this more than I would have if it was a comfortable thing.
Top of 54 is the how to create a good habit. This is the first law of the cue, make it obvious. Second law of craving, make it attractive. Third law of response, make it easy. And then fourth law of reward, make it satisfying. And then the inverse of that, how to break a bad habit, right? Make it invisible, right? Like, and I think they'll even talk about this later on, right? Like, you want to get off social media on your phone, like, don't have social media on your phone, right? Well, that's completely impossible. Okay. Well, then, make it unattractive, right? Like, stop, like, unfollow every time sucking site on your social media if you can. Make it difficult, right? Like, move the app to like your fifth screen on your phone, or some people talk about like they will remove the app from their phone and they have to re-download it anytime they want to use that app on their phone.
He's telling me he has something that he taps his phone on before he leaves the house that shuts off his social media on his phone for the day until he, I don't know what it is, but it's some device that it
Yeah.
like blocks his social media till he taps it again.
So, and if you guys have kids who use Snapchat, so like Snap's the worst
But that,
because it gets you into, I mean, it is like, so you have streaks and you don't want to lose your streaks. So you are constantly like, I gotta keep all these streaks going, so I have to be like on it, but I don't miss these notifications. And like, so there's times I'll take Grace's phone and it'll be like, oh my God, like what is going on your phone? Like it is like, zzz, zzz, like, so I'm trying to work with her on like, get rid of all this notification stuff, because that's what's happening is you're getting a cue, right off the bat. And it's just starting this, like, I see this.
we all the same with.
Real still.
We're learning with Wordle, right? Yeah.
Most of our phones have a do not disturb function, so like in the morning, I think I have my program like all throughout night, but also I think for like o'clock or something like that, so working out in the morning or get the kids like not having it buzz and beep and all that stuff.
And even like the watch, I've had to stop wearing my watch when I exercise because it'll vibrate and then I get distracted.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, is it, and so I'm like, okay, as great as it is to, I guess I could probably change so it doesn't buzz. I'll be taking Pilates or something and then I'm totally distracted. So I'll just take the watch off.
All right, so we're coming late on time, so let's go through 4. Okay, 4, we start digging into these 4 laws, right? So 4, we start digging into cues. Thoughts on chapter 4?
Hey, Joe, it's Reno here on Zoom.
Hey.
Hey, buddy. I thought this was really interesting, that an example of the man who was having a heart attack, and how often as agents, we can see a conclusion of a transaction happening even before the contract is submitted, if you know something about it, right? Or you just have that sixth sense of, because you've been doing it for so long, the direction that something is going to take before it even happens. And it's really interesting how your clients will not see it and appreciate it once it happens. I don't know if anyone else in the room has ever had that sort of experience. Does that make sense? Am I?
Yeah. Oh, give me an example. What's something that you?
Sure. Yeah. So let's say that you have multiple offers on a property and you decide that you would like to help someone who you feel deserves an opportunity, and they have a loan program that requires a repair that you're not aware is going to be necessary in the property. And you express to your client, say, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, if you decide to take this offer instead of the other offer, there's potential for X to occur, but they still decide to do it anyway. And then you take the offer and a repair needs to be made when nothing would have need to have been done, and we would have been closed faster and with less stress on the seller's behalf. Just, as an example.
Yep. Well, and I'm sure there's even simpler examples in the sense of how the offer comes over.
Yep.
Is it like 37 PDFs? Is it a 32 megabyte file that can't be downloaded properly?
Yeah.
It definitely triggers some cues.
Yeah. Like, if you're exactly how you're saying, like an agent, how they represent themselves on the other end of the transaction, you kind of know what you're going to get into, and you're hoping for another offer to come in so you don't need to deal with that agent.
I think even just our current market right now, like we have this gut feeling like, we really need to think about, there's not this major concrete evidence of change that's, you can show these statistics, but we all just are feeling this change and, but that's because of we're, the same reason she saw that the guy was having a heart attack. It's just years of sort of doing it. And you're picking up on these little nuances that you might not have otherwise.
All right,
I think that example, Joe, was really just an affirmation of habits we already have, whether they're good habits or bad habits. So with the heart attack business, it was like a skilled person built some skill sets through lifetime of doing it. Now, if that's translated to a habit, it's really just an example to try and show us that, excuse me, just in my opinion, that when you build some good habits, they put you in a place that you're highly skilled, then you wouldn't be if you weren't there. So do I need to be identified with people if you're having heart attacks? Absolutely not. But there's definitely skills for our business I need to develop and would like to be really top class at. I think that's the teaching there with that.
yeah, and I'll kindly amend that. In that, I think what they're trying to say is there's cues that happen in professional that create big results at the end, right? I think like the heart attack one, right? Like notice that the face, which is a telltale sign. But I think that there's cues that are happening all the time that are triggering us to do little things too. And that we don't necessarily always, that don't have this massive impact at the end, or we just save someone's life, right? Or we save someone from making a $30,000 real estate mistake. And I think that's a little bit of the flip side of this, is that there are cues that are happening that we need to be more aware of those cues to start off with, because with those, they sometimes are triggering us to do things we're just subconsciously doing that don't have a big result, but then again, at the end of the year, you're like, why am I still in this position? Why didn't I achieve this goal that I set out to do? And it just was all these little minor under the surface cues that were
I
happening.
agree with that.
Yeah.
It goes back to the bicycles.
Yep.
Breaking everything down to little
Yep.
tiny things, being aware that these things are there.
Yeah, so Margie just said she wanted the whole class to do the habit audit, I think. Would y'all want to do that for next week? Just try it out. I will send you guys at the end of the class the
You want me to do an audit on your habits? Is that what you're?
I'm gonna do my own habits.
Yeah, okay.
And to some point, some of these habits are gonna be, for someone, they could be positive, another person, they could be negative, right? Like they talked about like with Donovan, right? Like he wanted to gain weight, so him coming, like eating a steak in the morning is probably a good thing for him, not a good thing for me. So I'll give you guys that whole habit audit, and try to track it, try to see what you do in the morning, to see what are cues that are happening throughout your morning, that could be positive or negative.
Or neutral.
Or neutral, yes, or neutral, yep. All right, anything else on chapter 4, the rest of the book?
I mean, I do, because it goes into it, the pointing and calling, I think,
Yeah.
just saying things out loud. I know that my husband, and I won't say the little mantra he has, and he's taught my boys about when he leaves. But it's just this like, well, it's spectacles, testicles, watch, and, wallet and keys or something like that. But, and he's taught my boys that, and it's
Yep.
like, it's that saying it out loud, making sure you've got everything you need when you're walking out the door.
It's from a great movie, man.
Yeah.
The Silent Cross.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
What movie is it?
Oh, Ben Stiller, I'll look it up, I can't remember.
That's
Comedy.
okay.
What their priest the rabbit.
Anything else on this chapter? All right, cool.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, guys, I'll send out a link to the, actually, cause I got all the notes that, he's got like a resource
Keep it
page.
the faith.
So you can do this audit as well.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys next week. Next week is
Does that have to be a form
chapters
for that?
5 through 10.
There's a form for that, Joe?
Yeah, there's a little form.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I'm new to this.
Yeah.
So you all, do you meet on a regular basis and you're just always doing business clubs?
So, yeah, we'll take a couple of weeks off, or a couple of months off. So the last one we did, I think, was in February.
Okay.
Was,
Oh, then, so that is.
we'll do one, like, we'll do one for here. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Miracle Morning, I love that, I don't know if you did that for.
So it's funny, I heard you
Yeah,
That's a
yesterday.
great one.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Not that I know you keep track, but we are next door neighbors. Somebody's getting married.
Atomic reaction.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep, thank you guys. But it's a good book.